Muffled command, unintelligible. Wait.
Put your hands up now. He doesn't understand you. He's autistic. But the officer doesn't stop. What happens in the next 30 seconds will cost him everything, and the footage will make sure the world never forgets it. Most people watching later think they understand what they're seeing: a routine police stop, a teenager refusing to comply, an officer doing his job. But what they don't realize, what no one realizes in those first few seconds, is that every assumption in that moment is wrong. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because when authority meets misunderstanding, things don't just escalate, they explode. Before we go further, ask yourself this: if someone doesn't respond to you, do you assume defiance or something deeper? The body cam footage begins mid-motion. The camera jerks to the right as Officer Daniels steps out of his patrol car, boots hitting the pavement with urgency. Red and blue lights flash behind him, washing the scene in pulsing color. Ahead, just outside a dim convenience store, stands a teenage boy. Still, quiet, disconnected. At first glance, nothing about the boy signals danger. He looks about 16, wearing an oversized hoodie, hands hanging loosely by his sides. His gaze drifts, unfocused, like he's somewhere else entirely. But to Officer Daniels, that's already a problem. "Hey, I said put your hands up!" The command cuts sharply through the night. No response, not even a flinch. The officer's steps quicken. The camera shakes with each movement, closing the distance fast. Around them, a few bystanders linger, some near parked cars, others by the store entrance. You can feel the shift before anyone says it. Something isn't right. The boy shifts slightly, not aggressive, not defensive, just uncomfortable. Like the noise, the lights, the pressure, it's all too much. "Why are you ignoring me?" Daniel snaps, his voice rising. Still nothing. And that's when the first crack appears. A woman's voice breaks in, urgent and sharp. "Officer, wait, She doesn't finish. Daniels is already moving closer, faster now. The body cam dips as his hand hovers near his belt, not drawing anything yet, but ready, reacting to what he believes is resistance. This is where situations can still be saved. This is where awareness changes everything. But awareness requires something most people lose under pressure: pause. Daniels doesn't pause. The boy finally reacts, but not the way the officer expects. He turns slightly away, shoulders tightening, head lowering. It's not defiance, it's withdrawal. A silent attempt to escape something he doesn't understand. "Don't turn away from me," Daniels barks. Now the bystanders are fully engaged. One steps forward, raising his hand, trying to get attention. "Officer, listen, he can't—" Cut off again. Because in Daniels' mind, the situation is already defined. Non-compliance, potential threat, control required. And once that narrative locks in, everything else becomes background noise. The camera jolts as Daniels closes the final gap. Too fast, too forceful, too certain. And in that moment, right before everything changes, there's a split second where the truth is right there trying to be heard. But it doesn't reach him, because he isn't listening anymore. He's acting. And that single decision is where everything starts to go wrong. The moment Daniels steps into the boy's space, everything tightens. Distance disappears. Control takes over. And context is completely gone. "Put your hands behind your back," Daniels orders, louder now, sharper, each word carrying more force than the last. The boy doesn't comply, but he doesn't resist either. He just freezes. His breathing quickens. His fingers twitch slightly at his sides. His eyes dart, not toward the officer, but away from him, like direct contact is something he's trying to avoid at all costs. To Daniels, that hesitation looks like defiance. To everyone else, it looks like something else entirely. "Officer!" the same woman shouts again, stepping closer now. "He doesn't understand you. He has autism." That should have been the turning point. The moment everything slowed down. The moment the officer reassessed. But it isn't. Because Daniels is no longer reacting to reality. He's reacting to his interpretation of it. And interpretations, once locked in, are hard to break. "Stop moving," he snaps, even though the boy hasn't actually moved in any threatening way. The command overlaps with the boy's subtle flinch, creating the illusion of escalation. A false feedback loop, the kind that builds tension out of misunderstanding. Another bystander pulls out a phone, then another. Within seconds, the moment is no longer just happening. It's being recorded, from multiple angles. That changes everything. But not for Daniels. Not yet. He reaches forward and grabs the boy's wrist, suddenly, forcefully. The reaction is immediate, but not aggressive. The boy jerks back, startled, his body recoiling like he's been shocked. His other hand rises instinctively, not to fight, but to create space, to cope. But to an officer already expecting resistance, that movement confirms everything he believes. "Stop resisting!" Daniels shouts. The words hit harder than the grip itself, because now a label has been assigned. And once someone is labeled as resisting, every movement they make gets filtered through that lens. Even fear looks like aggression. Even confusion looks like defiance. The woman steps closer again, her voice breaking with urgency. "Please, you're hurting him. He can't process what you're saying." But her words collide with a wall of authority. Ignored, dismissed, overpowered. This is where most people watching the footage later feel it. That shift. That uncomfortable realization that something preventable is unfolding in real time. And here's what most people don't know. Under high-stress situations, the human brain relies on pattern recognition, not careful analysis. It looks for familiar signals and reacts fast. But when the pattern is wrong, the response becomes dangerous. That's exactly what's happening here. Daniels isn't seeing a teenager struggling to process commands. He's seeing a suspect refusing to obey. And the more the boy withdraws, the more Daniels escalates. The grip tightens, the commands get louder, the space gets smaller, and the situation spirals. The boy tries to pull away again, not to escape, but to regulate the overwhelming pressure closing in on him. But it's too late. Because now, in Daniel's mind, the situation has crossed a line. From control to enforcement. The camera shakes violently as Daniels moves to force compliance. Bystanders step forward, voices rising, tension breaking into open alarm. "Stop! He's not resisting! You've got it wrong!" But the words don't land. They can't. Because Daniels is no longer questioning anything. He's acting on certainty. And that certainty is about to trigger a moment no one can undo.
The moment the label resisting locks in, everything accelerates. Daniels shifts his grip, twisting the boy's arm behind his back with controlled force. The camera jolts violently as their bodies collide, shoes scraping hard against the concrete. "Stop resisting," he repeats. But the words don't match reality, because the boy isn't fighting, he's panicking. His movements are scattered, uncoordinated, driven by sensory overload, not intent. His breathing turns sharp and uneven. His knees buckle slightly as his body tries to process too much at once. To Daniels, it looks like escalation. To everyone else, it looks like distress. "Officer, you're hurting him," the woman shouts, her voice cracking now, urgency turning into fear. More people are filming, more voices are rising, but the louder it gets, the narrower Daniel's focus becomes. That's the danger of tunnel vision. It doesn't just block distractions, it blocks truth. The boy lets out a sound, not a word, not a sentence, just a raw, involuntary cry. It's the kind of sound that doesn't signal aggression, it signals overwhelm. But Daniels doesn't hear it that way. He tightens his hold, forces the arm higher. The boy drops to one knee, and that's when everything crosses a line. Because now what could have been de-escalated is turning into a physical struggle. One side trying to control, the other simply trying to cope. "Get on the ground," Daniels commands. The boy doesn't respond, not because he won't, because he can't. And in that gap between expectation and reality, force fills the space. The camera dips sharply as Daniels pushes down. The boy collapses fully now, his body folding under pressure, confusion turning into visible distress. His hands move unpredictably, not striking, not aiming, just reacting, trying to find stability, trying to breathe. But every movement reinforces the officer's belief. "Stop resisting!" Daniels shouts again. And with that, the situation officially spirals beyond control. A bystander steps closer than before, voice louder, desperate. "He's autistic. He doesn't understand you." This time, the words hang in the air longer, clearer, harder to ignore. For a split second, barely noticeable, Daniels hesitates, not enough to stop, but enough to register. And that moment, that tiny crack in certainty, it comes too late, because the force has already been applied, the line has already been crossed, and now everything that follows is reaction, not decision. This is the point most viewers pause the footage later, rewind, watch again, because it's the moment where everything could have changed, but didn't. And here's something most people never consider. The psychology of the authority loop shows that once a person in control believes they're being challenged, they often double down instead of reassessing. Backing off feels like losing control, so they escalate, even when escalation makes things worse. That's exactly what's happening now. Daniels isn't thinking about context anymore. He's thinking about control. The boy isn't processing commands. He's trying to survive the moment. And those two realities, they're colliding, fast. The crowd is no longer just watching. They're reacting. Voices overlap. Phones are raised higher. Someone steps forward again, closer than before. "Stop! You've got it wrong!" But Daniels doesn't respond, because now he's fully committed. And commitment without clarity, that's where mistakes become irreversible. The camera shakes harder as pressure increases. The boy's movements slow, not because he's complying, but because he's overwhelmed. And that's when it happens. The moment that transforms everything from a mistake into something much bigger. What would you have done in that moment? Stepped in or stayed back? Because what happens next, no one can take back.
What happens next doesn't just escalate the situation, it defines it. The camera jerks violently as Daniels forces the boy fully onto the ground. One knee presses down, pinning him in place. The flashing lights reflect off the concrete, turning the moment into something surreal, almost unreal. But it's very real. "Stop resisting," Daniels shouts again. The words feel automatic now, repetitive, detached from what's actually happening. Because the boy isn't resisting anymore. He's breaking down. His body stiffens, then slackens, movements losing coordination as the overload takes over completely. His hands twitch against the pavement, fingers curling inward as if trying to hold on to something that isn't there. "Officer, please!" the woman screams. "He's not resisting!" This time, more voices join her. "He's autistic! You're hurting him! You've got it wrong!" The crowd is no longer passive. It's unified. And that changes the pressure. But instead of pulling Daniels back, it pushes him deeper into control mode. Because now it's not just about the boy. It's about authority in front of witnesses. And that's where ego quietly enters the situation. Not loud, not obvious, but powerful enough to influence every decision. Daniels adjusts his grip again, trying to secure the boy's arms behind his back. The boy reacts instinctively, his body jerking in confusion, not coordination. And again, it's misread. "Stop resisting," Daniels repeats, even though the reality has shifted completely. This is no longer a confrontation, it's a collapse. And here's what most people don't realize. When someone with autism experiences extreme sensory overload, their ability to process commands can shut down entirely. It's not refusal, it's neurological overwhelm. The more pressure applied, the less responsive they become. Which means every command Daniels gives is becoming harder for the boy to follow, not easier. The situation is now feeding itself. Force creates confusion, confusion creates movement. Movement is labeled resistance, and resistance justifies more force. A perfect loop, a dangerous one. The boy lets out another sound, strained, involuntary, almost like a cry trying to break through silence. His face presses against the concrete, breathing uneven, body no longer in sync. And for the first time, Daniels hesitates. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it's there. Because now something doesn't match. This isn't how resistance usually looks. This isn't how suspects usually act. And that realization, it arrives too late. Because the crowd has already seen enough. Phones are steady now, focused, capturing everything. Not just the action, but the context, the warnings, the ignored voices. "Check him," someone shouts. "Something's wrong." And suddenly the narrative begins to shift. Not in Daniel's mind, but everywhere else. From control to concern. From authority to accountability. The moment stretches, heavy with tension. And then, just as quickly as it spiraled, it stops. Not because it was resolved, but because reality finally forces its way in. The boy stops moving entirely, not resisting, not reacting, just still. And that stillness, it changes everything. Because now the question is no longer about compliance, it's about damage, and whether what just happened can ever be undone. For a moment, everything goes quiet. Not completely silent, but different. The kind of quiet that follows when something irreversible has just happened. Daniels loosens his grip slightly, just enough to reassess. His breathing is heavier now, less controlled. The boy beneath him isn't moving the way he was before. No tension, no reaction, just stillness. And that's when it hits. Not all at once, but enough to break through. "This isn't right," someone says from the crowd. It's not shouted, it doesn't need to be, because now everyone sees it. The same scene, but with a completely different understanding. "Check him!" the woman yells again, stepping closer despite the tension. "He's not responding." This time, Daniels doesn't ignore it. He looks, really looks. For the first time since stepping out of his patrol car, he isn't reacting, he's observing. And what he sees doesn't match the story he's been telling himself. No aggression, no resistance, no threat. Just a teenager overwhelmed beyond his limits. Daniels pulls back slightly, releasing pressure as uncertainty replaces certainty. "What's wrong with him?" he mutters more to himself than anyone else. But the answer has already been given, multiple times, by multiple people. Too late. "He's autistic," the woman says again, her voice shaking. "We tried to tell you." That sentence lands differently now, heavier, because now it's not information, it's consequence. And here's what most people don't understand. Moments like this don't just stay in the moment, they expand. Every second recorded, every voice captured, every decision frozen in time. And once it's out there, it doesn't go away. Within hours, the footage spreads. Within days, it's everywhere.
Angles from bystanders, the body cam perspective, close-ups, replays, slowed-down clips that highlight every missed cue, every ignored warning. The narrative is no longer controlled by Daniels. It's controlled by what people can see. And what they see is clear. A misunderstanding, an escalation, a failure to listen, but more importantly, a failure to adapt. Investigations begin almost immediately. Internal reviews, public pressure, questions that demand answers. Why weren't the warnings heard? Why didn't the officer pause? Why did control matter more than understanding? And the hardest question of all, was this preventable? Because the answer to that one changes everything. Daniels is placed on leave first, standard procedure, but it doesn't stop there. Because the footage doesn't fade, it grows, each view adding weight, each share increasing pressure, until the outcome becomes unavoidable. Termination, badge gone, career over. Not because of one action alone, but because of every moment leading up to it. Every ignored voice, every assumption, every second where listening could have changed the outcome. And the boy? He survives, but the impact doesn't disappear. Because moments like that don't just end, they stay, in memory, in footage, in consequences. So now the question is simple. Was this a mistake or a failure that should have never happened? Because the difference between those two is what decides whether justice was truly served.